Hello, this is Philip from Salinas, and welcome to Huell's Gold.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 53 of Huell's Gold. I'm Chris.
I'm Alan.
And
who are you?
What's up? I'm Chaz.
Yeah, you are. So it's our 1 year anniversary show.
Woo!
Which
What's your last name, Chaz?
Scott.
Chaz Scott. Okay.
That was a middle name, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know people with two first names.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate occurrence.
So, yeah, it's our 1 year anniversary show. We want to bring a guest in. Chaz is our friend from far away. You may recognize him from a little show. What was your show called?
Diarrhea Diaries.
That's
available, wherever podcasts are listened to.
Yeah,
And what that means?
Yeah.
What you want to know about the show?
Yeah.
Tell the listeners. Oh, yeah. So this is a show about. All right. So Diarrhea Diaries is a show about people pooping their pants or not pooping their pants, but some sort of funny, horrible poop story. Most of them are my poop stories.
Yeah.
Because I'm lactose intolerant. A lot of them are, I should say. But I've had guests from all over this great nation. International. It's pretty good.
Including me.
Yes, yeah. Chris has been on the show. It was a wonderful, wonderful episode.
Yeah, I talked about it when it happened. It was a while back.
Yeah.
Alan still refuses to be on the show. He's got good stories.
I do.
Obviously, we're
holding
not going
back.
to tell him here.
I'm trying to persuade him.
Holding out for a better deal.
Yeah.
Either way, we wanted to bring Chaz on the show because we've both known him for a long time. And when he first heard that we were going to do this show, he let us know that he does not like Huell Howser.
Okay.
Which brought. We've had many discussions about this, and we wanted to have one on air about why you don't. And we'll get into that in a second. But just basically, not everyone likes Huell.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like the people who do really do, and the people who don't really don't. Like, there's not much. There's not a lot of
hate.
Yeah. So, Alan and I got into this discussion. I don't remember what started.
I was
it.
watching "Won't You Be My Neighbor," the
That's
Mr.
what it
Rogers
is, yeah.
documentary, and it got me thinking: is Huell's popularity, does it come from our generation, which is very nostalgic? I know this is leaving out people who are older than us, right? So we're not the only people that exist on Earth that like Huell
And
Howser.
it doesn't only have to do with age either. There's older people than us that are this way too, but it seems more ubiquitous within our age group.
I agree with that. And I think that we tend towards, you and I think this is at least, what would you call this? A common thing amongst people around our age where we are nostalgic.
Yeah.
And is Huell popular because he's part of our nostalgia? Or did he really do something that was worth noting, groundbreaking?
Well, Chaz, what do you think about Huell? Just now I want to know what do you think?
Okay.
Lay it out.
Yeah. So, basically, well, first off, let me say, I never ever California's Gold. I maybe saw it. It didn't leave any sort of imprint on my brain until you guys retold me about it, that you were doing this podcast. And it's not that I hate Huell Howser, so to speak, but I just didn't get the allure at all. And I think a piece of it, it's a good point, the nostalgia thing. I don't have the nostalgic connection, so I don't look back on him fondly in any sense of the term. And so the first time that I really sat down and watched an episode, I'm just going to be completely honest, his voice drives me absolutely bonkers. I can't stand the dude's voice, which I'm sure if you're nostalgic about it, it's like this, it's like smelling a smell that's familiar. You hear that weird wonky, what would you say, drawl that he has, and it makes you feel warm and fuzzy.
Voice, yeah.
It just grates on my ears.
Okay.
And I feel like, with a lot of these other, we're talking about PBS guys, Mr. Rogers, he's got these dulcet tones, very relaxing.
Yeah.
who else? Bob Ross, these other guys.
Yeah.
They were much easier on my ears, and they also, to me, there was something genuine about those guys. I feel like Huell's excitement a lot of times comes across as disingenuine, which I know is like a huge selling point for him, that he's like absolutely ripped out of his mind to be talking to this stranger about whatever random thing he's talking about.
His arms and his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's like flexing the
ripped
whole
in
time.
many ways, yeah.
He's flexing the whole time. And to me, it seems a little forced. That could be a misread on my part, but maybe it's not. I don't know. But so between the voice and like what I'm perceiving as being maybe disingenuine, which is probably, I think that would be the difference maker. Like if you thought he was genuinely that excited to be talking to people, then you would buy into that excitement.
Well, okay. So your arguments are always what I've heard when I've run into other people.
Sure.
So it seems like there's a fine line, really, with Huell and the other guys you mentioned, Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers, people like that. I tend to throw in someone like Jim Henson, who also was kind of in that world of uber positivity. Like nothing they seem to do really offended people, which is funny because I read Jim Henson's book and he really did like kind of offend people with some of his early puppetry, but afterward, like Sesame Street and the Muppets, like they were pretty safe. Anyway, I see Huell and the voice and the enthusiasm, and real or fake, it was still entertaining to me. But it did have that nostalgia built into it. But you Alan watched the Mr. Rogers documentary, and I watched a documentary I found on Amazon about Bob Ross, because he's one of these guys that I'm sure a lot of people think like, painting, I get it, afro. What else is there about him? So I wanted to know.
Sure.
And his voice also is one that you either like it or you don't. That kind of really, what was the term you used?
I don't know. Dulcet tones?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Because in the documentary, he said that he did that on purpose. He purposely talked in that soft tone in a way that he talked as if he was only speaking to one person who was just laying in bed.
Sure.
Like that, an audience of one kind of a thing. And do you think like Huell kind of...
I think he had like a representative audience, like person from the audience in mind when he was doing the show. Yeah. I think it's something deeper though.
With them as a whole, or him?
I just think in
Huell?
general, like with the way people treat, we almost want to call it its own genre. Where it's almost like... because this is like public access creations, and it produces a sort of personality that people are attracted to that I don't think we would otherwise get. This is what I think is interesting, is you're talking about Bob Ross. He's a quirky guy. Huell's a quirky guy. They're all cool, but they're quirky. Yeah. We talked about Mr. Rogers was a quirky guy, right? But it was almost their work was what was more important. And so I feel like it's weird, and the reason I think it's deeper is because I think now it's a genre. This is why people can't recreate what Huell's doing.
No.
Right? You try, but it's just kind of cringy.
It's funny because the one thing that I see almost like 50% of the time when people talk about Huell Howser on Twitter is, hey, so-and-so, you're like the next Huell Howser. And I personally, not just as a podcaster who's doing this show, like as a person, think, stop saying that. Because it's just not possible. And it's like saying, oh, this wrestler is going to be the next Stone Cold Steve Austin or Hulk Hogan. Like, it's not going to be that way. There may be someone who does something equally popular, but it can't just be Huell Howser Part 2.
Right, but it's always in a retrospective, right, that we know who these people are. Like, you never, even when Bob Ross was on, I would even think when Huell Howser was on TV, when our parents were watching, if they did. I know Chaz's parents... maybe sounds like they didn't, because our core audience are those people between 25 and 40 whose parents had Huell Howser on in the background. Yeah. We've always joked about that. But it's kind of, I think there's something to it.
Because another thing about all of these shows in general, like, I doubt, well, okay, before I get into this, Chaz, did you watch Mr. Rogers regularly?
Yes.
Okay, like... all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
Same with Bob Ross.
Not so much Bob Ross, but later in life, yes, I did watch more Bob Ross than I watched
Huell Howser. Yeah.
Howser, yeah.
Okay. But do you remember any specific episode?
Well, Bob Ross is always tiny, happy little trees, so there's no such thing as a specific episode.
Exactly. But even though there were, like, every
Sure.
single episode was a different painting. It may be similar.
Right.
Same with Mr. Rogers. Like, he comes in, he changes the shoes, he talks about some positivity thing. He goes to what's the puppet land he goes to? The kingdom
I
of...
just watched this.
Should have
I
done
know,
more
bro.
research. Come on.
That's why I'm throwing it to you.
I forgot. I remember all the characters, but I can't
okay.
remember the.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, though. Like,
Right.
it's the same formula every time, and it's not even about specific episodes.
And
Like,
he never actually even appears in the alternate.
Yeah, when they go out.
No, yeah.
It's trip.
unless you... Well, never mind.
Right. And, yeah, I know.
But the thing with all these shows is it's almost like... Because there are episodes of California's Gold that people pinpoint because there's like a specific moment, the avocado dog, those kind of things. And besides that, any show you could throw on, which is what we're kind of finding doing this, it's just the personality. That's what you were getting at. It's like...
Well, I would say this though. Even so, it's the personality, but it's also the show. Because let's think to what most recent flop of Reading Rainbow.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Right. This is something that even the concept is you can only see it in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Because Reading Rainbow, everyone's excited. Oh my gosh, I love it. My childhood. Blah. Just flopped. Just didn't even take off.
And, I mean, we could get even deeper with all of these kind of reboot shows
Sure.
that have happened. Like, how many have worked,
Right.
really?
Yeah.
Like, the Roseanne one, would it have even really blown up as much if she hadn't have gone all
Yeah.
wacko?
That's hard to tell. Yeah, that one because it's
Yeah.
kind of
Not fair.
But I think because Huell did pass away, there is that pull to who could be the next one. But really, beyond this who could be the next one thing, the other thing I think is really difficult is to win people over who already have maybe what Chaz has, this kind of, he just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I don't think you're going to all of a sudden see the light. Like,
Sure.
obviously you are wrong in that he sucks.
Right.
I mean, you came to this show, you know what you're getting yourself
Yeah,
into.
I gave it the old college try.
Yeah.
I watched. I actually enjoy listening to you guys better than watching the show. So I don't even watch the show generally. I just listen to your podcast about it.
If you didn't know us, I don't know if that would be
That might not
totally
be
true.
Yeah, but I think so. For me, the thing that I've noticed. So I would say the difference, or the thing that I notice between all those guys, is there's a lot more. What I've seen for Huell Howser fans, let's say, is they're much more rabid. Like you said, it's like a love-hate. I don't know anybody that hates Bob Ross or hates Mr. Rogers.
True.
You know what I mean? So I feel like it's a smaller fan base, but the fan base for Huell Howser is more rabid. Like, the people that love him absolutely love him.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, there's a lot of, like, casual Mr. Roger fans or casual, like, Bob Ross fans where it's not like they consumed a lot of it, but like, oh yeah, that guy's funny or he's cool or whatever.
That's true, but I wonder with just watching. I mean, maybe it's the most recent in my mind. But he was very sensitive. Mr. Fred Rogers, whatever, Mr. Rogers was very sensitive when people.
Freddie boy, yeah.
Old Freddie boy. He had a sense of humor, but at the same time, he thought what he was doing was very important. Like, I don't think we could do this show and poke fun at Mr. Rogers or his puppets.
No,
right?
no.
And then people would say, oh my gosh, you can't say that.
No. Bob Ross, on the other hand, did have a sense of humor about himself because in that documentary, keep in mind, Bob Ross was a decade prior to Huell. Huell started in 1990. Bob Ross was more of an 80s guy.
Right.
So there was very little overlap in their time on PBS, but Bob Ross being in the 80s, he was able to kind of, he was national. Let's keep that in mind.
That's true. It's good
Mr.
point.
Rogers, Bob Ross, Reading Rainbow, all these things, national shows. Huell was just California, so there's that to take into consideration.
Sure.
But Bob Ross did see that he had become kind of a character, and that he did a number of things that kind of made fun of himself. He did an MTV spot, like an MTV commercial, kind of making fun of himself a little bit.
Sure.
And some other commercial type thing. Mr. Rogers, you saying, didn't, like, he knew he was kind of like a character, especially like Eddie Murphy was making fun of him on Saturday Night Live. Like,
right.
Huell,
But then he had taken a picture with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, yeah.
On David Letterman.
I think he could, like, he didn't take himself too seriously.
And I should clarify real quick. I didn't mean to say other people's work isn't important. Like Mr.
No,
Rogers
yeah.
doing the most important. I think his
No.
is the most sensitive to even try to comment on.
Yeah. But, like, Huell, it seems like he knew that he was a character probably from day one. Because I think maybe the main difference between someone like Bob Ross, someone like Mr. Rogers, against Huell is that Huell was straight up just a TV man. Like, that was his job from day one. He was on the news. He did TV shows. Mr. Rogers, his show was more, like, he had more going on in his TV show than just television itself.
Right.
I mean, Huell's show, it was about history, about California, about all this, like, current events, anything like that. But it was still a TV entertainment show more than...
You know, I think there's something different with Huell as well, and that's that we know nothing about his private life.
No.
So it's almost like you want to defend. So Chaz brought up he thinks he's being disingenuous. It's a good point, because if you don't believe Huell is, we don't have anything to back that up, right? Like, oh no, he is, because look at all these shows that he made. But we know nothing about the guy. Like, we've heard really funny stories, not bad stories,
No.
in his personal life. But it seems like he's a bit of a different character, not in a bad way, not a negative way at all. But there is a showman
Totally.
going on. So,
And, I mean, even with Mr. Rogers, he was a real dude in that there was Mr. Rogers, but then there was Fred, who was married and was public about that, and, like, kind of did different things in the world beyond just his show. Bob Ross, the same way. He was married. He had these business partners. He owned a company outside of the TV show in selling paint supplies and giving paint lessons all over the country. Even, like, he would bring his son on the show, and his son would host an episode of the show, stuff like that. Huell is an enigma. Like, he's just the character you see on TV. And maybe if he had let people in a little bit more, that, what you're having, that feeling of disingenuousness, which you're not alone. Like, I don't want to...
Sure.
There are people who we talked to before we started this show, our show, who did not want anything to do with it. We're never going to listen to it because they did not like Huell. They thought he was just this annoying character.
Sure. Well, it's hard for me to see. Like, I've seen, I think Mr. Rogers, Fred, whatever his name is, he spoke in front of, like, the Senate at some point or something, right? And it's like, in general, just how he interacted and his cadence and everything was very similar. I just have a hard time closing my eyes and envisioning Huell Howser running around talking to people in real life the same way that he does on the show. You know, like, how would that be received? Like, every time he'd like, whoa! But it could happen.
The funny thing is, from what we hear from people, is that is what it was like. Because
Sure.
I email people have emailed us.
Right.
In fact, I think someone, it was a long time ago that this email came through. I need to get back in touch with this person, but in a couple episodes, we're going to Knott's Berry Farm. And this person who emailed me had some kind of insider info on having met Huell, and just, they say he was like the guy on TV. Now, the video, we've mentioned this video before. The one of him, it's like, it almost feels like a hidden camera thing.
yeah.
Where Huell is just talking to a room full of people and just kind of telling some stories, but very much not in a major character-y way. Do you remember what he was talking about?
He mentioned something about Disneyland. Does that trigger anything for you?
Yeah, Yeah, I don't really remember the specifics of what it was, but it definitely was the only time I've seen Huell be really humanist. Like he just really felt like a regular dude.
Yeah.
It was later on in his life. He was already kind of an older guy, and he felt like an old guy kind of complaining about some stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. He's a real human being as far as we can tell.
And we've talked about like what draws us to Huell is that he goes out of his way, whether it's disingenuous or not. We don't know, right? So, but he makes people feel like they're special.
Yeah.
Like where you live is special. Like it's important. And these are the things I think Huell Howser does and the impact he has on people. And to that extent, I think he was that person. I don't think he ever left, trying to do that his whole life. But it's hard for me to say as the human being, right? To me, you love his show, right? We love his show. Chaz, indifferent.
Yeah.
That's a nice way. But yeah, so I don't know.
But the thing is, like, we wanted to bring you on here because you are more of a minority in that you didn't feel like an automatic kind of draw to him. But truth be told, many people did. Like most people who kind of see this everyday kind of guy going to different California spots seem to have, he had millions of viewers and his show lasted for 20 years. So he did something right.
Yeah, totally.
And obviously we liked it a lot enough to do this for a whole year now. But beyond just us hashing out why Huell is the way he is, we also want to have Chaz sit in with us while we do a real deal dissection like we normally do. And it's a really weird episode for you to watch.
To jump in on?
Yeah, because it's really not the most exciting. And you haven't even watched it yet.
Nope. This is going to be first reaction.
Yeah. And we might have explained this to you before, but when we do this show, Alan and I both separately watch it, take notes. Sometimes we'll talk a little bit before, like you sent me something, a text of this crazy like research paper, which we'll get into. But then when we come together, we just sit, we turn it on, we have the show playing silently on the same screen as we record this. And a lot of times you'll hear us say like, oh, wait, look at this kid's shirt. And that's what triggers it. That's all Chaz is getting is just the video playing silently while we do this. So this is going to be interesting.
I might like it better.
True. Since
I don't have to hear him.
Since the voice is your main problem, I guess.
Well, it also this shows as well. I think it's a good thing that you know what, we're not a cult.
No,
we can have a discussion, right?
Sure. I haven't been excommunicated for my opinion,
No.
which is nice.
We're not taking anyone to the log cabin like Crystalia. But anyway, we need to get right into this one. And this week's episode is called Huts and Hangers.
I'm intrigued just by the name.
Yeah. So, as you heard at the beginning of this episode, we still have that sick AOR theme that we all love so much going.
Oh, yeah.
But the cold open is pretty wild. It's probably the wildest thing in the whole episode. Mm-hmm. Huell is in...
Well, let's see. Oh, did
it
show it?
It hasn't shown it yet. Okay. He's in a very iconic structure. Obviously, it's off the ground. Care to guess, Chaz, what he might be in?
Well, since you're asking me in this way, I'm guessing it's not an airplane, and it's really high up. Blimp.
Oh!
Nailed it!
The silhouette of the blimp showed right as he said it.
Right as I said it.
I mean, the most famous blimp would be...
The Goodyear.
That's right.
I want to say something funny, but
No.
Just the Goodyear. Yeah.
It's a Goodyear blimp. And the Goodyear blimp that Huell is in is heading to the hangar, which, I mean, why didn't he call it hangars and huts? And just
to me, it starts with an H-A, right? H-U.
Whatever, man.
I know.
Either way, we're heading to Tustin.
Ooh.
Tustin. So, Huell, tell us all about this thing.
Our first destination was Marine Corps Air Station Tustin, located in Orange County. And coming in over the base, we quickly spotted, in fact, it was impossible to miss them, the two huge buildings we were on our way to visit. Built in 1942, they still hold the record as the largest wooden structures in the world. They're enormous, even from the air. And to find out why they were built in the first place, you have to go all the way back to the early days of World War II.
Uncle Sam revives the dirigible as a defensive weapon. Soaring along, our skyship is idled down almost to the speed of a surface vessel. The Navy is finding that a fleet of blimps is a valuable adjunct to warships on convoy escort duty. Cruising range is 2,000 miles, and trained observers aboard keep in constant touch with shore stations. That's a friend down below. The United States has never lost interest in the possibilities of the blimp, and the Navy's building 21 more to keep sentry go on the ocean routes that lead to America.
Well, the Navy blimps that patrolled our Pacific coastline during World War II, looking for enemy subs and guarding against invasion, are long gone. But the 2 wooden hangars built to house those blimps are still very much a part of the Southern California landscape. We thought it'd be interesting to take a close-up look at them, and we arrived in style aboard the Goodyear blimp, which uses one of the giant hangars when it comes in for its annual maintenance and overhaul. Well, after we de-blimped, we were met in front of Hangar 2, and our tour began.
All right, so before we get started with any of this, Chaz, have you been to Tustin before?
No, I don't think so.
Do you even know where Tustin is?
Southern California.
Good guess. Good guess based on the star on the...
Nailed it.
Yeah. What about you, Alan?
So I always forget if it's in Los Angeles County or Orange County.
I think...
It butts up, right?
I
Weren't you born in Tustin?
Gosh, I can't believe you just said that.
Where were you born?
Torrance. You never get it right, ever.
So good.
No, I really don't even... Obviously, you see the star on the map, you kind of get it, but I don't know.
So Kathleen's dad used to work in Tustin.
Okay.
So he used to commute there, and I forget the boundaries. Like you can definitely see where Western Riverside County stops and Eastern Orange County starts on the 74 because the roads get a lot nicer. And I don't know if it's the same for Los Angeles County and Orange County, but I know it's around the same area.
Either way, we need to get him on the phone sometime and ask him about this hangar here.
Yeah, we should.
It's right next to Santa Ana. I just looked it up on my phone.
Okay.
So you know where Santa Ana is.
True.
Yeah, see? There we go. So it's
All right.
just east of Santa Ana. Yay!
So Chaz obviously doesn't listen to the show that much because we usually like to stop and look stuff up and get the chance to do the
I did
do
it on
that
the fly.
stupid.
I did it on the fly.
Yeah,
No,
do
no,
that
go away.
that
Sorry,
little
oops.
sound effect that I love to throw in every episode I can. Either way, I figure I would have seen these hangars if I had been through Tustin because these are the largest wooden structures in the world.
Okay.
Shut your butt.
So, no, I think that's true. Well, I don't know if that's true. It's ambiguous. Because
You're going to start
multiple people claim to have the largest wooden structures. It could have been in 1990. What is this, 4?
Yeah, 5, I think now.
Either way, these things are butt wild.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. You heard a little bit in the clip about how these are just these giant hangars, and really it doesn't you can't even get a real grasp on the scale even in the video because the blimp looks like it could straight up just be a little drone version in the video, but we know that the blimp is giant. Like the Goodwill. The Goodyear blimp is giant, but once we get into it, we're going to get the real dimensions of this place. But first, we get our... Huell has to de-blimp. Did you get that?
Yes, I got the de-blimp, yeah.
So Huell de-blimps,
He de-blimped.
and then he meets up with Lieutenant Commander Hugh Tolford.
So before we
Hugh
get...
Tolford.
I know the names, okay. And then also Gunny Sweem.
Dude.
How did he get that name?
Wait, who's Gunny Sween? Which
Gunny
guy?
Sween is the. He looks like he belongs with Major Payne's.
Oh, he's the military guy? That's a real deal military name right there.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
what I'm saying. How do you think he got that one?
Because, yeah, Chaz, as you see in the video, there's this guy who looks like he, sells suits, maybe,
Sure.
in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And then Major Payne over here.
So his life's butt wild too.
Hugh or Gunny?
Hugh. I don't
Okay.
know much about Gunny. I couldn't. It kept telling me that did you mean this?
Yeah.
On Google.
Because unfortunately we don't get the graphic below of what their name is, but Hugh Tolford was a blimp pilot back in World War II when this big old Tustin hangar was built. What did you learn about him?
So he lived a pretty crazy life. I don't have a whole lot written down here, okay? But he did so the Death Valley 49ers. He was the president of that club.
Okay.
And they have a nice little biography on him. He's done many things. I mean, a good example is that he was a blimp pilot.
That
And,
alone,
as
yeah.
a commander too, like in that rank. So his life is super interesting.
Well, either way, he's really only in it for maybe 45 seconds, just talking about how, well, he's a little longer, because he gives the stats on how big the building is and the blimps.
So can
before
we just say, like,
Gunny takes over?
the crazy things that happen with the building first before we talk about the dimensions?
What are you talking about?
So it's so big.
Oh, this.
So
yeah.
big.
Yeah.
According to the Orange County Register, which did a nice little article on it. So big. But really, though. It's so big that it can have its own weather system.
Yeah.
So this is what old Gunny McGuns talks about. Gunny, what's his name? Gunny Sween.
Sweem.
Old Gunny talks about. He said there's fog,
Yeah.
but also the marine layer gets trapped and it could rain, and so it'll have its own little rain event.
That is butt wild. Wildest butt. So
It's probably a mist, but it's not like a
yeah,
downpour.
of course. So Chaz, when you look at this thing, because obviously you're not as kind of in the Huelliverse as everyone else. I mean, you hear us talking. You say you listen to the show, but did you watch shows like this in any other form, like kind of documentary weird show, or were you just watching NYPD Blue? What was your thing?
Yeah, as an 8-year-old watching NYPD Blue. No, well, first of all, I notice you guys comment a lot on what people wear.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the show, and I just want to say I like Huell's outfit in this because there's no muscle shirt. I'm not a fan of the muscle shirt
Wait,
polo.
you're
That's
not?
yeah, I'm not. I know that's hard for you to accept.
Wow.
Because you like it when sun's out, guns out.
Yeah.
But he looks a little more dignified in this.
How have we
in
been
this.
friends this long?
I know, right?
Such a different perspective.
No, it's good. Look at him. He's looking normal.
It is good too. That's a good look.
He's looking good. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm going to
gotcha.
throw this out there because, I mean, you obviously don't know the whole lifespan of the show. Even Alan's not as well versed in it because I'm the only one of the three of us sitting here who's watched every episode.
That's insane.
I took the time to do it. Mainly because I sat in front of a computer all day, and during my lunch breaks, I would do it. Later on, when he kind of let himself go, he just dressed like this all the time. So
Maybe you
partial
should
to
start
that.
at the end. You should work your way backwards.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea. Anyways,
plus, he said he asked way funnier questions
as I got
later
older.
on.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
to me, maybe I would be more intrigued. But I started with you guys from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so maybe that was rougher. Maybe it's just skip ahead. But the buildings. Oh, what did I watch growing up? I did like documentaries.
Okay.
For sure. But mostly animal documentaries.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that British guy? Roy Atten, whatever. He does all the voiceovers for Planet.
David Attenborough.
David Attenborough.
Yeah.
That guy. I
Brother-
really like animal
Yeah.
documentaries. But yeah, stuff documentaries, no. And then it was just
Stuff documentaries.
I like animals.
Oh,
man. And then cartoons and whatever, normal garbage stuff kids watch.
Yeah, of course. It's funny you said animal documentaries because there is another guy who's kind of in this realm of the Mr. Rogers, Bob Ross type. And he's another person that I throw in this that not a lot of people know by name. I'll throw it out there. His name is Marty Stouffer.
Nothing.
He hosted a show called Marty Stouffer's Wild America. And it was a nature documentary show. hosted by him, and he just did his own voiceovers. He would be in the episodes, fooling around with animals, being kind of weird, and he was very much an amateur. Like, he had a degree in English. So his voiceovers were very kind of floral language, like very nicely written out voiceovers. But he would kind of just fumble through the forest and just do weird things. And he kind of maybe got in some trouble for staging some stuff. Not trouble, but, you know.
Marty.
Like a Bear Grylls kind of thing?
Sort of.
It didn't really happen, but people were led to believe it did happen?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a reality show in the same way. Because most nature documentaries, they are staged in a lot of ways.
Right, but I'm very defensive because Dual Survival.
I know. That was...
show, and they did it for real, so...
But either way, I think that kind of plays into the same thing of this, like, amateurness that maybe some of these guys have, because even Bob Ross, he wasn't a professional artist.
Right.
He would even never say he was. Mr. Rogers, I mean, he wasn't like a legit child psychologist by any means. He just, kids, you be nice to him. Talk to him like real people. We're good. Huell, just show up. Just go to a place.
Yeah. Which is
TV ain't rocket surgery. That was his thing.
It's just stuff documentaries.
Stuff documentaries,
You like
man.
that?
Speaking of the stuff, we need to get back into the stuff on this one because,
Okay, let's get to Nick though.
yeah, Nicolary?
I'm gonna go with Nicolary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nicolaray.
He looks, dude, just top shelf. What do you call this? What's a fancy way to say, or like a way to say someone's just sharp? He's the best looking.
She looks like a gentleman.
Just very, but like the best.
Yeah.
Like another like higher
Yeah.
than just a gentleman.
You know who he kind of bears a small resemblance to is our friend Steven, who we've talked about many times. His wife's dad, his father-in-law.
Oh,
Yeah, I see it. I'm with you.
yeah, I can see that.
Not totally, and you know, I don't know if Megan listens to this, she'll probably disagree. It's her dad, but having seen her dad like 3 times, a little bit to me. Either way, this is definitely a proper gentleman.
Yes. I mean, it's funny just next to also a person who wears a uniform that's just rolled up like a kid was wearing it. His arms. Rolled up the sleeves. So Nick,
Uh-huh.
if it didn't come across, he is the pilot of the blimp.
The
He was there
Goodyear
since
blimp,
like
yeah.
1984, I think. That's when he started. I didn't write it down. I remember reading that, though.
Yeah.
So the final flight of this blimp,
This specific Goodyear blimp. you mean.
I don't know if this Goodyear blimps in general, which I'm guessing they just serviced. Like,
There's
I don't-
still Goodyear blimps.
They don't. Do they still operate?
Heck yeah, bro.
Well, it could have been this one, the one specifically I was watching.
Yeah. I think
because Nick was in the final flight of this particular one.
Okay.
And I wish I would have wrote it down now because it sounds like it was a specific blimp.
Yeah.
But that was August 10th, 2015. And they brought old Double N on board.
Wow. So he wasn't like the full-on captain at that time. He just
No, it was
got to be on the last flight.
It was just lady. It was just captain.
Okay.
Whatever. Some other one.
Obviously
But,
not as important to you as Nick, since you just don't
no,
even
'cause I don't know
her
anything
name.
about her. She wasn't on California's Gold.
Then she doesn't matter.
Well, there was also, it was full of pilots, though.
Okay.
Yes, everyone's dead to me that's not on California's
Hold
Gold.
Hold on, I got a comment.
Okay.
Am I allowed to do that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. No, well, I'm getting my first good look at Nick McSweeney. What's his name? Gunn Sweeneyson? What's Gunny McSweenerson?
Gunny Sween.
He looks like you guys have seen Anchorman?
Yeah.
Butch, the sports guy.
Yeah.
That he looks just like him.
Like in the face? I didn't
in the
notice
face.
that.
Go back a little bit.
Okay, yeah. At about 8 minutes, 38 seconds. Totally. Yeah. Okay.
Watching him talk, I don't know what he sounds like, but I have envisioned the same exact voice.
It's
that
not.
actor has.
No, it's not the same. Having watched the show, it's not the same.
Dang it, I won't watch it. I don't want to ruin it.
But either way, I never said the dimensions of this big old hut.
Let's hear it.
No, it's the hangar. We're not the huts
Well,
yet.
no, but before we get off the blimps, though, what Huell says...
You just cannot let me say
Dude,
this.
no, I'm just...
What do you got?
The blimp is it's exciting. Because Huell talks to Double N,
Yeah.
right? And he says, you ever amazed how big it is? Talking about the hangar, which you're going to describe,
Mm-hmm.
give us the dimensions for. And he says, you're used to being the big guy on the block. but in here you look like a pipsqueak.
Oh, man.
Dude, Nick gives nothing.
Yeah.
Just responds. Yep, he's pretty large.
Love it.
Because the blimps themselves, like the blimps that this thing used to hold, which were World War II blimps, you heard it in the clip, that were kind of patrolling the shore and all that, were 290 feet long and 80 feet wide. Now, they could fit 5 to 6 of those bad boys in this thing because it's 1,100 feet long, 300 feet wide, and 170 feet tall, which, big old huge thing. But my favorite statistic that Huell kind of obviously was told within his tour, and then he had to stop old Gunny and say, like, wait, let me set you up. And he's like, hey, can you give me some more statistics? Like, how much wood? And he's like, well, there's 2.7 million board feet of lumber. What? Like,
Yep.
I know. This is the thing. Because when you're talking about Huell, he'll give me some numbers, volumes. Like, how many trees did it take to make it?
How many trees did it take to make it? Yeah. And then I like the other statistic of 143 tons of metal, bolts, brackets. It's like, how did you figure that out?
And then the 0.7 acres. So no, 0.7. No, 7.7. Oh, 7.7. So we have that, and then old Gunny, if the wood used to build these hangars were cut into half-inch strips. So just imagine that. Yeah. They would stretch to New Zealand and back.
Yeah, I could see it. Close your eyes, imagine it.
If you cut it small, it'd probably go to the moon.
Yeah, I know. If you turned all the wood into toothpicks, Mars and back. Anyway, this is part of the show where we get to really see how Huell really is afraid of heights.
So you brought this up when you were hammering through the shows. Mm-hmm. How afraid of heights he is.
Yeah.
And how mistrusting.
Always
of
mistrusting.
Structures. Right,
Yeah.
but he's totally fine in the blimp.
That's weird, yeah.
It's
and in planes, there's other episodes where he's in planes. But here, Chaz, you see, they're on this catwalk way above the top here. And you see Gunny is way ahead, and Huell looks like he's
very
slow.
He looks like he's learning how to walk again.
Is this solid here?
I just like he's just grabbing both sides so tightly.
Yeah. And he's like constantly, is this the original 1942 wood? Like, are you sure this is okay? And
no rotten wood, right?
Yeah. Gunny's having to constantly reassure him that everything's okay. And at about that, the height thing starts about 10 minutes, 20 seconds in. But at about 12 minutes and 25 seconds, Huell seems to forget all about the heights because he spots an owl up in the rafters of it. And
it's soup sight.
This, honestly, is one of those times where you can see the genuineness in Huell, I think. Which we're not going to listen to it, but you see how he's like... Do you see how excited his face is?
I do see. He looks like my small child getting something he wants.
Exactly. Huell was pretty childlike, I think.
Sure.
In a lot of ways. And then they just head up top.
Where'd those gloves come from?
I wasn't going to bring up the gloves.
All of a sudden, he's got magic gloves appear.
He's got like these leather work gloves that my grandpa would use when he was like making things out of wood when I was a kid. He's very
super beefy.
Yeah, just thick hide gloves. Either way, Huell is really into these hangars, how big they are, and really, I wish that there was a better way that the camera could have shown the scale. What can you do?
I agree with that.
How wide is a football field?
I went up a soccer field.
Well, it's the same. I don't know.
I think not 50 yards. Is that
I really don't know.
We have to look. Oh, let's look it up.
Okay, hold on.
This is amazing.
All right.
Okay. Oh, so I see what you're saying. I thought you were turning a football field on its side and measuring it down there. Okay, lengthwise. No, Gunny, I think, brings this up. It's actually 5 football fields fit inside.
Yeah.
And also, it's 17 stories tall.
Ooh.
That's another way to
Sure.
think about it.
It's a big boy building.
Yeah, but
For sure.
Before we leave it, it's sad to say, only one of them is still standing.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, they shlamied the other one.
How many were there?
There were 2.
Two.
2. Oh, okay.
2. So the south hangar was slaughtered. No, it was demolished for the Tustin Legacy Project. This basically planned community.
Oh, gosh.
Well, they ceased to use them though.
Yeah, what are you
They're
going
starting to get
That's
a
lot
bit
of space.
sketchy.
I know, but Huell went there.
Yeah, oh, right.
That's
No,
my
leave
argument
it
for
as a
most things.
monument. I get it.
No, you'd have to save everything. Either way, that's it for the hangars, right? Like we need to head on
I
north.
think you're right.
Huell, where are we going now?
Our next destination was up the coast, about 60 miles northwest of Los Angeles. We were headed for the U.S. Naval Construction Battalion Center at Point Hueneme, home of the Navy's famous Seabees. Now, the Seabees are famous for building things, and one of the most famous and well-known structures they have ever built is the good old Quonset Hut. During World War II, thousands of Quonset Huts were constructed on military bases all over California, and today many still exist, including 2 that have been converted into a Seabee museum at Point Hueneme, a fitting place to begin our Quonset Hut adventure.
So we're on to the huts. Not Jabba the Hutt, but the Quonset Hut
Oh yeah, those.
over in Point Hueneme, which it took us 20 tries to figure out how to say that last week.
I have it phonetically.
How did you spell it out?
As Huell says it, Hueneme.
Hueneme.
Just Yeneemee.
Yeah, that's close enough. So, I gotta tell you, I think this is one of the most inconsequential things that's ever been on this show. And I feel bad because I think this is just us, like, civilian idiots who have no military connection, just saying, like, what's the deal with these huts? Because really, you see that these have had a big history in the Marines and everything, and I just think we don't have any connection to it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But obviously people do, because Huell spends over half of the show on the Quonset Hut.
Yeah, well, and we find out later why
True.
he's interested in it.
Yeah.
But so they are at the U.S. Naval Construction Battalion Center, which means really nothing because we're interested in the Seabee Museum.
Yeah.
Except I thought she was saying Seabee, like capital C, capital B,
Yeah.
as in construction battalions.
Isn't that kind of what they are, though?
Seabee, Seabees.
I know, but what is that? I know that's how it's spelled, but they're
Right.
still doing that, though, right?
Yeah, they're still doing it.
Okay.
But I thought it was Seabees for that reason, so
I thought it was like
just throw
I
it
thought
out
it was
there.
like CB Radio.
I thought it was like on Frasier, the Seabees, the award show.
Oh man, the Seattle Broadcast Awards. So, Chaz, when you see this show now, so you got Huell who kind of grinds your gears. You got huts that really like you. If this was about like animals, you'd be into it. But this is just like the most boring of stuff
Sure.
kind of documentary. I see that this is not really going to be geared to everyone. And I think that maybe this would have been an episode that if your parents were watching, you would turn right round.
Sure.
You
change channel.
You turn round.
Sure. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't blame you here. Because this is still early in the show's history, and it really kind of shows how the beginning of the show was more about the stuff, and then later years in the show it was more about the people.
Yeah.
Because we really don't get a lot of interviews in this segment. Like, first we start off with Carol Marsh, who's a staff historian for Point Hueneme's naval yard, whatever you said it was called. Did you get anything on old Carol?
I didn't. She's still alive, so that's good.
Okay.
Usually I'm delivering some bad news.
I know.
Looking at Chaz, if you don't listen, it's always
Right. Yeah.
a lot of people die off.
It's old.
Okay, so you're telling me Huell in this situation.
Yeah. I don't like his shirt. Are you gonna ask me about his shirt?
Well, and the color combo.
Oh, sure. It's all right. The guns thing gets to me. So.
Like, are you jealous, or
No,
is it something
it's
that you
just
you think?
goofy.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna make sure I get polo shirts that the arms are too small.
I think that's just how. I think
custom fitted.
no. I think his arms are just that big.
He's just jacked.
Yeah, because there's a bit when he's on the Kern River in a life vest. We've talked about this multiple times on the show.
Oh yeah.
Bro,
Yeah.
he's
jacked out of his mind.
He's jacked,
man.
yeah.
He's fit. Fit. So the Quonset Huts, right?
yeah. Kwanzaa? Is that what you said?
What is it?
Quonset.
Quonset.
You're throwing me off. I was trying to spell it in my head now. I can't not hear Kwanzaa.
No, it's a funny story.
Oh wow, you actually do
I have a story about these huts. Not these ones in particular, but I used to work at a boys' detention camp, and they used to
That's
house.
right, you did,
They
yeah.
used to house all the boys in those. Not those particular ones, but
that
Wait,
style
was
of
that
thing.
the program, the Boys to Men program?
yeah.
You had to go through?
Yes, juvenile detention for basically gang members, and they would house them all in these huts just like this. And I went into one, and it was super crazy. They hold up really well.
See, the first thing I thought of was a hoop house.
What? Because it's like half of a circle, like a hoop.
It's very hoopty. Yeah.
You're talking about. So I used to be a farmer.
Yeah.
And we did have hoop houses, but they had.
Well, you're like an onion. You just keep peeling back.
Yeah,
layers, huh?
I did a lot of jobs. In the hoop house, but that was either like a clear vinyl or a glass ceiling, and a lot of times it was even made out of like PVC. It was basically just like a ghetto greenhouse.
Yeah, I remember seeing those on the 101 heading from Nipomo to Pismo Beach. There were always some there.
Yeah, they were light structures. These things hold up like crazy.
Mm-hmm. And really, the ones that we're seeing here at Point Hueneme are a little, I would say, worse for the wear. Like they're obviously holding up, but it does look like
Looks like the ocean got to him.
a little bit, yeah.
You got to give them a fair shake. They are like really next to the ocean.
And they were built in the 40s. This is World War II
Yeah,
tech
it's
right here.
pretty old.
So Huell really liked seeing the ones that were kind of being repurposed, which is what's going on at Point Hueneme, because a lot of them are offices or things of that nature. But he really wanted to see some still being used in the way that they were meant to, as kind of like military barracks. So he just is only at Point Hueneme for a few minutes, and then he just bolts out of Ventura County to head down to San Diego County?
Yep.
To go to Camp Pendleton. And that's where we're going now. So here's Huell again.
We had a great day at Port Hueneme, but we had one other stop on our Quonset Hut adventure. We headed south down the coast to Camp Pendleton, the huge Marine Corps base just north of San Diego. Now, we went to Camp Pendleton because we'd been told there were a good number of Quonset huts there still being actively used by the Marines. And that turned out to be an understatement.
So here we are. Camp Pendleton. First off, when you hear the name of our next guest here, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Thiffault, I thought he said depot.
I thought he put. Look, I got TIFO.
Tifo. Yeah, he really kind of just blaz out his own name. And I think maybe that's the only reason they threw up his name, because this is only the second name that gets thrown up there in words on the thing here.
And then we get one real quick.
Yeah.
Right? Well, first we get Huell knocking on the side of one of these bad boys, like he always does, testing it out. And then he talks to old Mark Tifo. Mark Tifo. And Huell asks him, how long can these things last? And we get an IDK.
Pretty much, yeah. His answer was really weird, because Mark said, well, you know how it is with the Marines. It takes a long time to build things. So we want to keep things going for a long time.
That's right. He did say that.
It's like, that's really what you like, because it takes so long to build new stuff. You're going to keep these 57-year-old huts around. And hey, I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it sounds like they do break a lot, and they just keep fixing them over and over again.
And they're still there. So I looked on Google Maps. I did an overhead satellite view.
Because, okay, before you say it, this is the most Quonset huts in use in the world.
In the world?
That's what he said.
Dang. Missed that part.
And that's still going on, you're saying?
I just did a shot whenever the last satellite picture was taken. I thought they were going to, unless they're new.
I don't think they're going to
I don't think they'll replace them.
Let's put the same things back up. No.
Well, back over in Point Hueneme, we did hear from one of the people that Huell was talking, because we got a couple other interviews that went on beyond just Carol Marsh, but we didn't get their names so much, that there are new style kind of prefab buildings that the Marines use now.
The PBs.
Is that what it was?
He called them PBs. Yeah.
Okay. The CBs using the PBs?
the pre-built.
So obviously these aren't still being built new anymore, so they're just using these old ones. And right when the thing you just said a second ago, when Mark was saying, "Oh, well, we don't know how long they last," the one that they're near, Huell is really kind of ripping it apart verbally, just saying like, it seems like you obviously just painting it over and over again.
Like shining a turd. Is that what you're saying?
Segue into your show, I guess.
Oh yeah, we get to meet this guy, Captain Tim Jardin.
Yeah,
and he lets us in on a little inside, or I guess, lingo.
What was that?
He calls these things. What does he call these? I can't read my own handwriting. Basically, he says, there's a lot of bunks in here.
Yeah.
And, how many? Well, and Huell uses his own thing. How many racks do we got? Is what Huell says.
Oh, he did. I didn't even catch that. That's what that meant.
This must be military, right? But old Captain Tim says, "Oh, this particular hooch has 31, but it could hold 32." So
man,
I know a little bit now.
It's good. Hooch.
Yeah. So there really aren't a lot of like kind of everyday dude talks going on here. It's a lot of just professionals who know a lot of facts about these hooches, I almost called them, huts and hangars. And the only time that he really talks to anyone is like these new Marine recruit guys who are obviously having to live in this hooch here.
Dude, I just put their sad boys with Z.
For sure, yeah.
First of all, because someone cut off his sideburn. And I don't know why anyone would do that.
The dude on the left obviously had sideburns, and they got cut off because there's still that little shadow of a burn going. But either way, Huell really, like, you can feel it in his talk that he's really feeling the Marine-ness of it. Like, can you, you're not listening to it, Chaz, but, like, the little bounce in his step there, and he's, like, constantly smiling. He's really happy to see this, and I don't know, like, you've heard our show, you've heard us mention this. You know that he was a Marine himself, right? And really, from my having watched all the shows, this is the only time he ever actually says this. Maybe he mentioned it in, like, Visiting or other shows that he did, but this is the only time that he says much of anything personal about himself.
Sure, I feel like I did know that, and it must have been from you guys and not from the show then.
No, because we've mentioned it before.
Sure, yeah, okay. So, yeah.
Because, I mean, even the way he says it, because we're already at the end here, and he says during the credits, and on a little personal note, which you never hear Huell say that. Like, it's always business only.
Yeah, to me, I have it, actually made it in my notes so I can go back and look. This is the first time he mentions being in the Marines, like you said.
Yeah.
And I guess it's only, you've seen all the shows, so if you can't.
There are other times where it gets brought up to him, but not him bringing it up himself.
Sure.
But the closest thing we got was when he flew to San Nicolas Island.
Yeah.
And he was wearing that bomber jacket or whatever he was wearing.
Well, there's another time when I think it's a visiting episode where he's on Olvera Street and he goes into a restaurant and there's a guy who like kind of runs up to him, which doesn't happen as much in these early days, but this guy just runs up to him. He's like, "Oh, I'm such a big fan. Yeah, I'm a Marine like you." And Huell's like, "Oh, okay," and then tries to veer away. And the guy obviously followed him into this restaurant and then is sitting like a table away and still kind of, hey, you know what it's like because we're Marines, right? And Huell's just like, bro, like.
Was he like dishonorably discharged or something? Like, or does he just not want to think about that part of his life?
No, according to A Golden State of Mind, the documentary on Huell Howser, which I wish was easier for people to see because been shown 2 times on PBS in California, and then you can buy the DVD at AAA stores.
Stores?
Well, you know, like the
Right,
offices.
yeah, it's just funny.
And there's like the little place where you get the maps and stuff at AAA offices.
Yeah.
That's where I bought my copy. He was in the Marine Reserves.
Right.
So I don't know if there's some like weird little.
You know, my dad had this complex though too. He was in Vietnam, but he was a helicopter pilot. Mainly because he wasn't drafted, right? He actually chose to go in, so he got preferential treatment. And he does not consider himself a veteran.
He was in Vietnam. There's
I
still
said,
people
Dad,
shooting at the
I
helicopters.
said, Dad, we can go to Black Angus right now and get a steak. But so maybe there's a complex, right? Like an inferiority complex. If
maybe
you're a different rank or something.
I don't know.
You're not legit somehow. That's what you're saying.
Somehow. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So
I don't know. I'm not military. I don't understand that.
I only know about skateboarding.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's about it.
I know a lot about wrestling. That's Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, true.
But then he switched to the Iran Contra side.
Well, how did it
of
work with
things.
Big Boss Man?
Dude. Okay, my favorite thing to think about with Big Boss Man is something that my friend Matt, who is one of my like long-term wrestling buddies, we've watched wrestling, been to wrestling shows for many years now. When he was a kid, he thought that because back in the day, wrestling, there were people with just jobs. There was the cop, the plumber, the garbage man, all these like occupational characters. He thought that all those people must just be the best at that. So he thought Big Boss Man was just the best cop. Sergeant Slaughter, the best soldier. Just
That makes sense.
all that stuff.
And Jake, what was Jake the Snake?
He's just the snakiest boy around. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Either way, Huell is the best, Huelliest guy ever. I know we didn't win you over, Chaz, but
We're just trying to soften your heart. We're playing the long game.
I'll watch it with new eyes. I want to watch this episode where I actually listen to it now. So
Yeah.
I know what the heck happened.
I think there's a few other episodes that we could show you that would really kind of get your juices flowing for
Yeah,
Huell
maybe.
more.
Like I said, I'm receptive. That's
Uh-huh.
just at first blush, it didn't hit me.
It's okay. We don't hold it against you.
Good, thank you.
Either way, that's going to wrap it up for this week, yeah? You
I
good?
think so, yeah.
All right. Once again, Chaz, what's your show?
It's Diarrhea Diaries, wherever your podcasts are sold.
Yep. And we'll throw a link up on this episode to his show. I'll probably link the one I was on.
Yo, please, yes.
Yeah,
It's a
because
great
obviously I'm biased.
No, it's a good episode.
Bileless. I try to make a pun with digestion.
Nope.
Anyway, where are we going next week, Alan?
We're going a few places. First, we're going to San Joaquin Valley. Psych. San Joaquin Valley.
Yeah.
We're going to look at some olive orchards, and then we're going to the Old Graber Olive Company in Ontario to see the processing methods. And then let's go into Knott's Berry Farm.
That's a big one. This is like the olives, I guess, probably are not what's going to be driving people to that episode. But Knott's Berry Farm. Knott's Very Farm. I mean, that's the closest Huell really gets to any sort of like theme park. This is a big
That
boy
is a
one.
big deal, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that'll be a good one. This is a good one. Thanks, Chaz, for being on.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's been a year, Alan.
It has been a year.
This is the year show. and this is our time to announce that we are officially
doing our last show
of the first year. No, we'll keep doing it as long as we want to do it. But we hope that you come along with us this year and every year as we continue our search for Huell's Gold. So, like, Alan brought up a good point. Like, how do these fools even go to the bathroom on a blimp?
It has to be a bucket method, dude. Something.
I don't want to plug my show.
Do it. Plug it
Diarrhea
away.
Diaries, wherever podcasts are available. But if you've ever been on a blimp and had diarrhea, I would love to hear that story because that sounds like a horrible place.
So if you
get diarrhea.
So if you were on a blimp and you had to de-blimp,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Throw. Do you got an email or something they can send us?
Hit us up on Instagram
Okay.
at Diarrhea Diaries Podcast.
And where all podcasts are sold.
That's right.
Okay.
And available.
Yeah.